Soup shots might sound like an innovative new scheme to sell 2-ounce cups of tomato bisque for $15, but it's actually a new trend in espresso. Does it sound good? No. And to be honest, when I tell you how it's done, I don't think it'll sound any better. If you've heard of turbo shots, soup shots are their more extreme cousin, using even coarser grounds and almost no pressure. If that doesn't even sound like espresso to you, you're not alone. Let me show you how it's done, why it's interesting, and try to convince you that you should use your fancy espresso machine to make what is essentially really, really weird pour-over. Now, before we try to do this on a proper espresso machine, let's see what it's like to do it as intended with a manual lever machine. Being relatively new, there are a variety of different recipes out there right now, but the general parameters are a ratio of 1:3 or greater, a shot time around or under 25 seconds, and a brew pressure never exceeding 2 bar. I know it sounds insane, but let's try it out. Using this Flair Pro 2, we'll use a 16-gram dose, aiming for 64 grams out in under 25 seconds. Once we fill the chamber with water, we'll apply a very gentle force to the lever until we can see that water has completely permeated the puck. Then we'll follow through with moderate pressure, but never enough to get that gauge very far above 1 bar. So that felt and looked totally wrong. If you know anything about espresso, that probably looked like a shot you'd dump without even tasting it. Astonishingly, it tastes pretty damn good. And it's also probably obvious now why they're called soup shots. They look kind of soupy. They're still rich, but they're thinner than traditional espresso and generally have much less crema. I think it's best to think of them as something new between espresso and filter coffee, with the closest analog maybe being mocha pot coffee, but even that is a little different. There are a few big benefits to this method. It's quite forgiving when it comes to grind size, it suffers from very little channeling due to the low pressure and high flow rate, and it tends to produce clear, bright flavors that make it great for lighter roasts. This method is really intended for manual brewers, but since we sell espresso machines, and I'm currently surrounded by about 30 of them, I of course wanted to try pulling a soup shot on an espresso machine. As long as you have a flow control paddle, there's no reason you can't replicate this method, but there will be 2 key things in our way. First, we aren't going to get any tactile feedback from our paddle, and second, we have to contend with filling the headspace above the puck blind before we can really start the process in earnest. But don't worry, this isn't entirely a trust the force trench run moment. In playing around with soup shots, there are a few things that I found help considerably. Using a puck screen is key for soup shots because it can help reduce the volume of our headspace and it keeps the puck tidy during the fill. I've also found a shot mirror to be borderline necessary for soup shots on a machine because you'll want the brew pressure gauge and the bottom of the basket in your sight throughout. Or you can just do what I did the first dozen or so times and do like 50 squats per shot. So, using our Lilith Bianca and our shiny new Mazarfilos, let's give this a go. We'll be using this delightful geisha from Wallflower, one of my favorite shops in Portland, and we'll use a 20-gram dose and aim for 60 to 80 grams out in just under 25 seconds. Man, yeah, despite looking crazy, this tastes really, really good. This coffee has some fun tasting notes: passion fruit, bubblegum, blueberry. When I've tried to pull shots of espresso with this, it's really tricky to get clarity from all those flavors and get a sort of balanced flavor profile. With this, that bubblegum note, which I feel like is a little bit elusive but is definitely there, really comes through towards the end and sticks around in your mouth at the end of the shot. And you don't have any lasting bitterness, which is really incredible. I tried doing this with some darker roast coffees with our Kickstep. I can't really recommend you do that. It's really better suited to a lighter, brighter roast to bring clarity to those bright flavors. And this is just really smooth, really delicious, and even though it has slightly less body than an espresso, it's still, like I said, somewhere in between. And so it's got a satisfying richness to it. While this method is really reliable and really forgiving, it does have a few cons to it in my experience. Some of those are already present when you're using a manual machine that has a column of water, but some of those do get slightly more troublesome on an espresso machine. I think part of that is just that when you're dealing with such a high flow rate, the espresso machine is not doing as good of a job as a straight column of water is on a manual machine. And so you tend to get a little bit more uneven flow towards the end, a little bit more channeling potentially, but none of it seems to really be affecting the shot. The flavors still come through really nicely. As I was saying, puck prep helps, the puck screen helps a lot. I think a paper filter on the bottom could be really huge for this. I haven't played with that too much. The other thing on espresso machines is that we have to fill that headspace when we start pulling the shot. With these, the second you're pouring water in there, that's in contact with the puck. So you're kind of already starting the brewing process. With an espresso machine, you need a few seconds to fill that headspace. So if you're doing this on an espresso machine, I would recommend, even though normally we're shooting for like 25 seconds or under, some of that is including, dwell time, where that water is sitting on top. So with an espresso machine, I would say give it an extra 5 or 10 seconds because you're gonna need that time at the beginning. And the shots that I've had the best results with on espresso machines tend to be closer to the like 30-second and even 40-second range. I don't know if that's breaking the mold too much, but I've pulled a few 40-second solid 1-bar shots with this that are like 1-to-4 ratio, and they're really good. I feel like that might be the sweet spot if you're flow profiling. Overall, if you have an espresso machine, this is worth trying. All you have to do is go a little coarser than you would already be doing for a turbo shot if you've done that. It's pretty easy to dial in if you're flow profiling because it comes more down to you controlling the flow. Obviously your grind size is gonna affect extraction, but it's not too hard to figure it out by taste from there. And the results are really interesting and really different from what you normally get from an espresso. So if you have a lighter roast coffee that you're worried about finding the perfect recipe for, and you spent freaking $30 on a bag of it, I think this was 28 wallflower, came through, give this a go. It's very forgiving and it's really easy to get really tasty results. In summation, could you just do a pour over or an AeroPress? Yeah, probably. Do I, like every other espresso enthusiast, require a constant parade of new techniques just to feel something? Yes. That said, I have genuinely enjoyed the coffee that I've gotten using this method so far. It's a very forgiving and consistent way to get great coffee, especially from lighter roasts. For more espresso experiments, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.